Okay, so we're finishing up these trees. We're doing this just the same way we did the kind of autumn tree where we took that light yellow and then went to a deeper orange and then a deeper red eventually. But we took 4 steps of color. I think it was yellow, light orange, kind of a burnt orange, and then red. And then once we were done, we did the tree trunk. Again, thinking about light to dark. We started with kind of the highlighted part of the trunk, and we're going to do that over here. So I'm getting some of my darker greens in here. And again, I'm using my sponge for this. For this one, I'm doing 2 trees, which is fun. And I'm bringing in as much color as I can. This is the darker area. I'm making it uneven, again, just like you do, you know, the trees, because the trees, remember, are not regular. They're not lollipops. So that's good with the leaves, and I'm going to do one last color, so I'm going to rinse this off. And I'm going to mix my last color, which is going to be a deep green. So up here, if I've kind of put some background trees, some lighter background trees. So I'm going to take some of this green that I have and make the larger trees that are in front. I'm doing green, but you could do any set of colors on this. That makes sense. With this one, we are doing wet on dry, meaning that the surface is dry, but the paint obviously is wet. There is a dry brush technique, which can be really interesting too, so that might be something you try to sample if you need a kind of a textured look. And then I'm coming in with a little bit of tone so it doesn't look just like a tree cutout. I'm putting a little blue in here so it has some dimension. So I'm going to finish these trees up while I'm waiting for these trees to dry. Okay, I'm on my last. I finished my trees up here. I got kind of background trees, and I have ones that are darker and they have a little dimension. I've soaked up my darkest color of green. I put a lot of blue in this because I really want it to be my deepest color. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and from here I'll be able to do the trunk just like I did here. So you can look at, you know, the tone of the trunk, how you want to approach it. Make sure that if you're using your sponge that you are turning it so that it's not creating a pattern. And you're also considering where the light is coming from on the upper right, so that this is the darker end and this is the lighter end. And these little kind of paint splotches are great because they really do look like leaves, and you don't have to, you have to worry about painting each individual leaf. So I've created a few different tones here, but I'm using kind of my medium brown with this beige and then a little bit of a warm yellow to create my light. My dark, I'm using the dark tone, a tiny bit of blue and some black. Now black tends to make things go a little bit green. It's a weird thing usually with a black pigment. But for this it's okay because, you know, what we're doing with it. So I'm going to take my brush. I want to make sure, again, we're going wet on dry, and I'm going to start to create the highlights. My light is over here on this side. It's going this way. So again, I'm just doing this one. I'm going to make these a little spindly. So I'm just doing a thin line, and then I'm just going to have it come out just a tiny bit because these are kind of more spindly trees. And I might do just a tiny bit inside here like I did before, just to show the texture of the tree trunk. And then I'll do this one right here. I need this is a little dark, so I'm going to come in and just grab a little beige. And again, I don't want to come all the way down to the bottom of our square. You want to kind of have your tree, you know, land. It should have a foot, essentially, right? It's not just like it's not like a cylinder that comes down straight and ends. So again, I'm going to do a little texture here. I may even do a couple of light branches over here with this light, since I have it. Because if you did see, you know, branches coming through, remember they're not just singular straight lines. In the lighter areas, they might be a lighter tone. So we're going to do that. Get the branches in there. Just a few in this light tone to give it a little dimension. Okay, and then now I'm going to switch to this darker, deeper tone. So I'm going to, within my palette, you'll see that oftentimes your colors kind of blend a little, but then they come out like it's light. It's like a creamier brown here and a darker brown here. So you can play with where you grab your color from and see, you know, how that can just give a little nuance. And I'm going to bring that right up into the tree just a little bit, just to make it a little different. And then I'm going to bring this trunk down and try to leave some of my light spots. Now, some of you guys will notice that as you're doing this, you know, oh my gosh, it's a little bit too dark here or there. And if it is, you can take a dry brush. I like my tone, so I'm fine with it. But if I wasn't, I could take a brush and just almost pull up the color just a little. You can do it with a paper towel as well if it's kind of wet, but that's another option, is to take a dry brush and pull your color up. And I'm going to have this come down a little bit on this side and then a little bit in the middle. Finish it off. I don't want to overwork it. I'm going to take some darker tones and have them come through with my branches on the inside of the tree. With this one, I'm going to do less of the branch than I did on this one, because I see it, you know, it's like a summer tree, you know, it's filled out more and it might not have as many branches showing, where in the fall you would see, you know, more branches because the leaves are falling. So I'll finish this up over here. Okay, so doing the ground plane, oops, I got a little spot right there. I'm going to take my sponge and like use it like an eraser. So with this ground plane, remember, we're going to start with our lighter tones. I'm going to start with just a very soft tone. But just like we did, I'll bring this up a little because I have a little wipe in there that I want to get rid of. And I'm going to have this slope down. Now we also would like to, because, you know, your ground plane is often, and you can wet it just a little if you want to bleed it just a little bit more. I'm just going to do it a little section at a time. So I get enough paint on there. And this is just a soft tone, and I can kind of play with the edge just a little bit. But then we also want to build a shadow in there. And when you build a shadow in, your shadow is a darker tone of the color that you're working off of. So I've got a green, and I want these two casting shadows to go this way. So I need a darker tone of that color. The shadow won't be gray unless your object was sitting on a white or black surface, right? The shadow would be a darker green, okay? So I'm going to fill this in, just finish this part up a little. And then I'm going to have these shadows come in. And again, this goes right up against the tree and kind of behind the trunk a little. And then I'm going to start with my shadows. My shadows are going to be a darker kind of green-gray. And I'll pull them in. And they can be weirdly shaped, you know, because they're shadows. So they're shadows of the tree. So you'll have a sense of like, oh, they're coming from the edge of the tree like this, but they don't have to mimic the exact shape of it. And then this one, I'm going to do this right here, add a little more there, and maybe a little bit right here. And this is my shadow. Again, this is a color shadow, not a gray shadow. I'm going to soften it there. And then I'm going to come back and pick up that lighter green and finish off right in here. So that becomes kind of a little hillside with a couple of trees on it. And you can see the shadows and how they look like they're cast from upper right light. So we're going to work on this area right through here. One of the things I want to say about the layers on this, and I need your kind of eyes up here just for a quick sec, is your sky. We've done the sky with our whole page of skies, right? So we've got that. That should be the most distant and have the least detail, unless you have really distinct clouds. Then this bank right here is kind of this hillside. Those should be soft looking and really blended. And this band right here, which is kind of like a tree line that you might see, you know, off of a field, that's going to have a little more definition. So that's what we're going to work on next. And what I want you guys to do is just really lightly wet this area. There's some bleed through on my hillside, which is fine because I'll cover that up. But I'm going to have my brush follow that tree line. And the only part that I'm going to wet is this. So it won't get bleeding into areas where I don't want it to bleed into. This is a great trick with watercolors. If you want, you know, kind of a soft looking area with lots of colors that get blended, but you don't want it everywhere, you just stop your water. Okay. Do that. And then I'm just going to pick up some colors. I'm going to have kind of fun with it and bring them in. I didn't really soak it, so I'm doing a few kind of highlighty areas that try not to make them too irregular, that look like, you know, highlights through the trees, on the leaves. And then I'm going to start to bring in some kind of medium greens. And once you come, you know, butt up against these other colors, you'll get, you know, a little bit of softening and blending, and that's okay. But it shouldn't completely go away. And don't do everything in like two colors. I would pick a few, because if you think about a bunch of trees along, it's you know, along like the edge of a field, there's going to be a lot of colors that come into play with that. So you want to give that illusion of different colors, and you can add, like I'm going to add this darker kind of brown green. And as it gets a little bit closer to that horizon line where the field meets that tree line, I'd like it to be just a little darker. So those tones on the lower part of this are going to be just a little darker. It accentuates that line, pops it just a little. I'm still bringing these color tones in, you know, up higher a little bit, but I'll have them more consistently at the base a little darker. And I really do like to add in some blues into this. I think it gives it dimension. I think we don't often think of blue in a tree, but there are a lot of blue tones. So I'm bringing in kind of a blue-gray that I have mixed. You see how it kind of makes some of that pop. As you finish this up, if you have any areas that are white through here or look a little too consistent, come in with a little color and a little dimension. Finish it off. And the last step on this is really going to be taking, you know, some care with that bottom line. It doesn't all have to be the same color, but I'd like you to really take some care. It should be kind of a little rolling, but kind of consistent that it looks like a horizon line. All right. So we're gonna talk about doing the ground plane, and in this I've done a few different samples. So in this sample I kind of left it almost like it might be snow, so we could do that, right? But I'm going to make this one so that it's more like a field in the spring. So I'm going to just wet, again, just to wet the area that I want to work with. And I'm going to leave the, I got a little blade through. I'm going to leave the path alone. That's going to be separate. So I'm just getting this wet. Be careful up on your edge right there. Make sure you have full coverage. And make sure you don't have any puddles. And then what I'm going to ask you guys to do with this one in particular, I'm going to kind of take some of the paint off of this brush and make it a little more watery. And in the back, it's going to be a lighter tone, and it's going to get a little darker as it comes forward. Okay? With your sagey green. I'd like it to be a little bit different from the tones in here. So I'm going to add a tiny bit more blue. So you got to get right in here on that back side of that path. And it's okay to kind of make it all consistent to start with. And then you can add more paint. It feels a little watery right here, but I'll come back to it. Make sure you don't have any puddles. And you're just working this section of it. So we're not doing the path yet. When we get to doing our final paintings of EMC, you guys are you're gonna do a few lines to delineate different spaces, but you're gonna be doing most of this with paint. So this is not a drawing project, this is a painting project. So the amount of drawing you'll do in the end will be very little. Now once I have this, and I really like it, let's say, I'm going to get a little yellow ochre, which is this tone right here. There's a gold too, don't get it confused with gold. Gold has got that metallic. I'm going to add a little of that in there. Kind of blend that through. That's a little strong, but I'm going to add some more color tone to it. And then I'm going to rinse that just a smidge and come to this darker green that I created and bring that kind of in the foreground. And you'll blend it a little with that ochre. And if at any point you feel like, gosh, I got a little too much, I think I do have a little too much on this back end, I'm going to just make my paper towel kind of thin. And I'm just going to come in, just like we've done the sky in the past, pull some of that color up. This is going to give it a little texture. You could do this with your sponge too if your sponge is clean. It doesn't have any other color tone on it. So we're going to wet the bottom area of this and try to leave a little slim line right underneath the tree line. And you don't want to overwork this when you wet it. You just want to wet it and let it soak in. That's it. You can check it by kind of angling your paper. Let it soak in, and then we're going to do the trees. This is quick and fun. You're going to take some of these same tones that you have for the trees and bring them down just to see how I'm doing it. If you want, you guys can tip the paper, but I don't think you'll need to. But you want it to just look like it just drags right out. And you want that sharp line right up underneath, so there's just a tiny line of white, and this will look like it's along a water's edge, right? That's what we're looking for. And you want to try to match these tones. So if you're not quite getting that tone, you can test it on the outside. Like that's I need a little more green, so I'm going to come in and get a little more green for that. But this should look soft and like it's just bleeding, you know? And if you need to come back in and get some more color or add some more, I'm going to like dampen this in here again to do this because this is drying pretty quick. Don't hesitate. Like up here, if I'm like, oh, is that the right color? I need a little more brown. So I'm going to get a little more brown. I can test it on just above the tree to see if I'm getting close to the color, if you already used it up. Yeah, that's better. So I'm going to come in just with a damp brush. Make sure I have enough moisture on there. Like that. Get these two trees. It should be a washed out version of your color. And don't forget your back trees over here that are going to be those light greens. And those are going to come in just a little bit right here. Those are the diamond shaped ones that we did before. Now one last trick that could be really nice, if you've got everything kind of wet, is taking your brush and giving it a light stroke in this direction. But you got to take this a little bit gently, just to kind of pull these tones through. This could be another good thing for a dry brush too. That's a cool effect. Guys, I'm recording. Thanks. One last Alright guys, time to clean up.
Oh, we're all done. We can walk now. She's like, yeah. We're going around our cycle again. And I was like, girl, chill. Like, yeah, I vote me. Yeah, you're trying to get to wreck. What the hell? Here, I'll put this stuff. I'll do it, but I'm not going to throw all this. I'll put the materials. You have to at least help me bring it. Oh, wait. I'm just so free. I'm going to stop. Yeah, let me finish. Okay, I'll get some like, how does it work? Like, not like showing it, right? No, because that's even more sauce. No, but you can't write the rest of your game. I know, but you know, you guys are going to like get up to it. I was going to do it, but no, it's not you guys. I think it's the group ahead of you, but yeah, me too.
I just want them back.
This is so